I was sort of prompted to cover a few things because I listened to, watched actually, a video with Intuitive Secrets with Michael Jaco, who has a friend of his along with his wife, and I thought, that's good. You got a male and a female together, and they were discussing about essentially recharging your battery, going into your inner heart and soul, having a conversation with yourself. And of course, this just unpacks an entire library of information that I collected from the time I was a child, which was in all my previous videos. I had to figure out how are they programming people to run acidic state of mind programming, or in other words, they're going in reverse. They're going in the opposite direction, which means instead of going faster, they're going slower, which means they're producing so much acid waste. As Dr. Robert Young said, the only reason they're not dead is they're fat. And how can they not know that what they're doing is committing sadomasochistic self-suicide? Okay? So I thought to myself, okay, I was just watching a girl walk by the street with her dog, and then immediately I'm thinking about all the experiences that I've had decade from decade to decade of what it was like to live in America. Now, it used to be when I grew up in the 1950s and 60s as a teenager, girls and guys held hands and walked everywhere they went, and you could see them everywhere, having a blast, fun. They loved each other, okay? The male normally protects the birth giver, right, for obvious reasons. I shouldn't need to explain that, okay? So I began to realize, and I noticed this, particularly when I was in Reno, when I used to see a lot of girls always walking dogs, and they're not particularly pit bulls, okay? And they don't have a male with them. So I'd say, hey, that's your new boyfriend to protect you. And that's true. You see it everywhere. Now, I happen to know why that is, because I've spent the better part of my life, because I realized that as time went on from the 50s and the 60s into the 70s and particularly the 80s, it was pretty difficult for me to find a girl and have a relationship with her that didn't carry an enormous amount of emotional baggage as a result of so much abuse that she's been through. So here is an equation when we talk about a species being able to reproduce itself and build a thriving civilization that goes on forever. Okay? So how do you expect a birth giver, okay, a female, okay, to be able to have unconditional love in her heart when she's going to carry a child so that that child can survive, okay, with a mother that loves it, if the woman itself doesn't even love herself as a result of the abuse she's been through? So put that into the equation of why they use trauma-based mind control to basically kill off a species when you start using the exponential function, okay, and everything else they threw at humans down here, okay, which was poisoning everything. The air supply, the ocean, your salt water, everything. I call them input-output streams, which is designed to produce just an enormous amount, or what I call an overload of acid waste, which is a waste product of metabolism. So why are they pouring sugar and acid into their body? Right? That's how bad it is. I mean, this is essentially reptiles, demons, vampires, killing off and essentially programming them in such a way that they'll kill themselves off. They don't need any help. So it's extremely painful, obviously, because I can remember a time when it was beautiful to sit around or walk down a public street in America, and you could feel the energy was great in a lot of the places that you went, because the energy that people were running or walking down the street, particularly with girls and guys that were in love with each other, was obviously higher. So when I go through community after community, I call them dead batteries. Okay? They're not running a whole lot of light in this town. So, as I've mentioned this many times before, this is a measurement of what happens in a healing center in a classroom. So obviously a boatload of light's got to come in here, whip their butt, and purge them. So that's what's happened. So you had to know that America was going to be the last stand. right? The Alamo. But the Alamo that's not going to collapse. Okay? So, as I mentioned to a lady a little while ago, a few hours ago, I thought to myself, this ought to be pretty simple for people to figure out. There's no way that a 3D chess player is going to be able to beat somebody that's 5D. Okay? You have the ability to know what they're going to do before they do. Okay? And that's the truth of it. Because it's pretty easy to do what I call to map the field. Look at all the options, all the possibilities. Because predators are very easy to predict. Okay? A being who's running very high intelligent, creative imagination that goes on forever, which means we have infinite ways in which to come up with something and come up with something at such a high rate of speed that they haven't thought about it. And they won't be able to think about it because they're not where that is. They haven't risen to that state of intelligence. Because the universe is intelligence. It's creative. A lot of imagination. So I thought it was important to sort of re-echo what this girl said on Michael Jaco's video about going into the heart, where your soul is, and reconnecting yourself with yourself. Now what I do, and I do this particularly when I'm in low-density places, is I have one of these binders, okay? This one here is about 100 sheets, and I probably fill one of these things up, I don't know, 5 days. And what I do is when I realize I'm in a very low-density consciousness area, then I got to process out all that junk. And one of the best ways to do that, and I've always suggested as an exercise, is start journaling every day. Going into the deeper you and processing that and knowing what you are and what you're not. And then going out and hugging a tree and taking your shoes off and grounding yourself with Mother Earth and get a chance to remember who you are, because we are what love is. A living spirit. That's what a Homo sentient sapien is. We give love to our children and we defend and protect them with all our heart. That is essentially the definition of a real American, which is why they were willing to shed so much blood in order to protect their children. So their children had a future that was better than the one they experienced. I know that because I experienced that in my own childhood with my own parents, my grandparents, and all the previous generations, that when you look at, well, why did you go do what you went to go do? Because of what they believed in, what they believed they were fighting for and against. So that's why this is the final dance. So it's like I try and remind people when they're sort of down, because essentially they really don't know what's going on, is that relax. We already won this. And this is actually the most exciting time to be alive on this planet, believe it or not. In the entire galactic history of this planet. That's the truth. I know that. And I pass that on particularly to children. So for what it's worth, I echo what a female says, mother, okay? And that is try and reunite yourself with your heart and soul. And I realize how hard that is, particularly with a lot of males and females that have been through an enormous amount of trauma. Because there's so much resistance, because this has been my experience, because I work with these girls and these guys, they're like they live in fear of experiencing what love was that was lost so long ago. That the very notion that they could feel that again actually scares them. Because when you're a child, you're vulnerable. And that's why they do what they do against our children. Is try to break your heart so it never comes back to be a power generator. They know the weakest point of a human is to go after the heart. Go after their children. Murder, torture, and kill and sacrifice their children. What do you think that's going to do to a mother? I know that because my clan mother, Karen Ann Luke McDonald, had similar traumatic experiences with her own children, and I could read the resistance that she has in her as a result of the experiences that she went through as a result of what they did to her children. Not the least of which happened to me with my own 3-year-old son. Because we're extremely emotional beings. Because we have so much love in our heart for those we give love to and give birth to. So there are ways to heal yourself, because this is all about healing from within ourselves as a result of the way that people have externalized the world that is driving what they experience, that they lose the translation of who they are. That's the programming. They know how to get people to believe that it is the external world that is driving what they experience, rather than your soul as the compass direction in which you're headed. That's called inversion, because it's a hologram. Bidirectional, sound and light echo chamber. So what you experience is based on what you are. What are you? What's your identity? Remember I covered that? Go back to my earlier videos. I talked about identity functions, right? So we have to get reconnected with who we are and restore what it is we know we are. And that takes healing. Just like I told the gentleman who's what's called a resident assistant that runs a gospel mission here. This is not a healing center. This is a retread center. This is an energy, what I call an energy storage bin, in which the enemy can purge low-frequency energy out of that storage bin and use it against us. So that's an enemy strong point from an Indian's point of view, which means it really needs to be shut down. But you got people that are in there, okay, that are essentially being supervised by people, most of which are hybrids, when they should be healing centers running by people who are higher states of consciousness that have an enormous amount of love that they're going to give them when they come in there. Because that's what heals you. So for what it's worth, I had a long conversation with a gentleman who's one of the supervisors in there. You know? If you really want to start healing people that are coming through that door as a result of the reason why they're coming through that door, okay? Because we can certainly do a statistical analysis to see how many people you're actually having any success with to get their energy up. So they're turnstiles. That's all they are. And they get money out of all that. Because look at all the money that people that live in this town throw into these places. Okay, they end up right back on the street, experiencing the same crap over and over again. They either end up in jails, because now they don't even have any of their own rehab hospitals for them. So they suffer. And that's got to end. So I'm doing my best to do that. Anyway, I love you all. Be good to yourself.